I'm your host, Marsha Florence, for Just Ask Podcast Live. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. As I always tell you about your Thursday special. So, ladies and gentlemen, whenever you see me, you see me every other week, that there's some resources out there that we have come up with so that we can share with you. So we do have a returning guest today, Miss Ruth Johnson, Public Policy Director over at CDAD, which, is known as the Community Development Advocacy of Detroit. Now, we asked Ruth to come back, and she comes back on a regular basis because she always has a wealth of information for us to share with the public. And this time around, we want to know about your legislation. How is it selected? Who, where? How do you communicate with them? Because a lot of times, you don't have to be a elderly person to say, I know my laws, I know my rules, I know my city policies. You could be a up-and-coming homeowner, want to do neighborhood development, like to have community gatherings to make sure that, things are going smoothly within your areas and beyond. It could be about the water board. It could be about the school districting, housing issues. So Ruth Johnson is one of those individuals who give us food for thought to help us get an understanding of how those laws are developed, who to contact if you have questions, and definitely seek her out if this is too short of a notice for you. So definitely I want to not waste any more time with my introduction, but introduce our guest today, Miss Ruth Johnson, returning guest, Ruth Johnson, Public Policy Director. Hey, Ruth.
Hi, Marcia. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, good. Always glad to see you.
Glad for this opportunity to be a guest on your show and share the knowledge and share the opportunities to get involved and improve our neighborhoods, our communities, and our state.
Well, we got the right person to tell us what to do now, so it happens to be you. So that's what I like about you coming to see us, Ruth, is that I know that what you're getting ready to tell us today is always useful information. And, a lot of people are just sometimes stumbling around trying to figure out, well, how do I connect with that? How do I know how to get involved? But I do want to start off with, tell us your part, your role there as the public policy director for CDAD.
I'm happy to. So, CDAD, which is Community Development Advocates of Detroit, is a member oriented, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization here in the city of Detroit. And we have over 200 dues paying members that range from block clubs, neighborhood associations, community development organizations, and many more who are interested in working towards revitalizing and stabilizing the quality of life in Detroit neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And I have the honor and privilege of serving as the public policy director. Sounds fancy, really isn't. It's only really being lobbyist for our members. I'm not a registered lobbyist, but I am in a position where I help our members connect to their elected officials and public servants to bring up ideas, issues, insights, inspiration, so that they can affect change in their neighborhoods, their communities, and throughout the state. And what I'd like to say is all of us, each of us, no matter our age, our background, our education level, are experts on the things that affect us, our families, and our neighborhoods. And we are born advocates. Think about a baby. The baby advocates for food, milk, and diaper changes. So it's nothing that we don't already know how to do.
You know what, Ruth? But I have to ask you on a personal level. I know that you practice law. So how did you
Yes.
switch over from individual law to public policy?
Really, it's some of the same. I'm an advocate. When I practiced law, I was an advocate for my client, whether that's an individual, a business, a nonprofit, or a corporation. But now I'm an advocate for my CDAD members and others in the community. It's all some of the same skills. It's listening, learning, and then communicating either in spoken words or written words. But really, it's everything that what I do is what we do every single day. If you think about all of us, we advocate on our jobs when we want our lunch break or for a raise. At school, we advocate for maybe a better grade. Many of us have been advocates for others. We might go with a neighbor to the Social Security office and help them navigate that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and understand that system. The difference with public policy advocacy is you're dealing with groups and public policies, not just your workplace policies or a school policy or something like that. And you have the opportunity not just to help one or two, but maybe help many people in similar circumstances.
Okay. All right. Well put together, Ruth. Well put together. So today's subject matter is about the new elected, I guess, state legislators. So I know a lot of people don't know who they are or how they come about. Can you give us some insight on that on the new group?
Yes. So due to redistricting, and redistricting is just a word that means the boundary lines for the different state legislative districts and congressional districts were redone, meaning you didn't move, but the line moved. So due to that, and also term limits, we have some new faces, some new people in our Michigan legislature. So the
Mm-hmm.
Michigan legislature is really two groups, the Senate and the House of Representatives. So we have 38 senators total for the entire state of Michigan. They serve 4-year terms that started January 1st of this year. And we have 110 representatives in the House of Representatives. They serve 2-year terms, again, on even numbered years. So it
Okay.
we're in a new year. And what's really interesting with this last election in November of 2022, the state of Michigan, the voters in the state of Michigan voted for, again, we're nonpartisan. We don't
Mm-hmm.
favor one party or another.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is we have a Democratic governor, attorney general, um, um, secretary of state, as well as the majority of people in both the Michigan House and the Michigan Senate are Democrats. But one of the things I'd like to point out, it's a slim majority, meaning there's still going to have to be bipartisanship, meaning both
Mm-hmm.
Republicans and Democrats, independents, libertarians working together to address the issues that Detroiters and Michiganders care about.
So, what are some of the top notch concerns of the people that voters? I mean, we vote these people in or help get these people in these seats, and yet some of the issues to be addressed sometimes get bypassed. So, what's on the table? Is there anything in particular on the table that we're strong about right about now?
I would say everything is still on the table and it's not too late. We're still in January, folks, so it's not too late. But I would urge people to do a couple things. So just last night, Governor Whitmer did her State of the State address.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to ask you to listen to an hour-long recording, but you can just do an online search for the Michigan State of State address, and you can hear how different people have analyzed. She talked about housing, which is something that is
Critical.
important to
Mm-hmm.
CDAD and our members, but it's an issue whether we're talking about city, suburban, rural, the Upper Peninsula or the Lower Peninsula, the earned income tax credit and a working families tax credit,
Mm-hmm.
because she understands, our governor understands, and many people in government understands our working families need help, but also childcare, lots of different things, infrastructure, which is the lead lines, our roads. So she talked about a lot of things. Already, our state legislature has been meeting since January 11th, and they've introduced bills or legislation. So it's just like the old schoolhouse rock. I'm just a bill on Capitol Hill. That's how things get started.
You're
But
telling
it's
your
never
age
too
now,
late.
Ruth. But I remember that too. But you're telling
I
your
almost
age.
started singing. I stopped myself, but I heard the little lyrics in my
I'm just a
head.
bill.
But
Okay.
whether the legislator initiates it, or you can go to your legislator and say, I have an idea, or I want to work with you on a solution.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too late. So we
Well, what are you
another
what are
thing
you
that's
looking
exciting
forward
about this
to?
state legislature is there's some people that are new to the legislature. So they are
Mm-hmm.
very eager to learn what we already know. They also have new leadership. So on the House side, the House of Representatives, Speaker Joe Tate is from Detroit, and he is the top leader for the Michigan House of Representatives. And so he's the first Black Speaker of the House.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the Senate side, we have Senator Winnie Banks. She's from the Grand Rapids area, and she's actually the first woman who has led the Michigan Senate. So that's also exciting.
Okay, okay. But I mean, didn't mean to cut you up, but what are you looking forward to or expecting this year, Ruth?
I'm expecting a lot of great things, but so are a lot of other people. So part of it is our legislators and other elected officials have to listen to many people's ideas, and sometimes they're competing and different. So whether we're talking about right to work and other worker protections, housing, although a lot of people are interested, the solutions they propose might be different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. That's part of their job, is to listen and synthesize and figure out what is the best for the entire state. But that means it's so much more important to make sure your voice and the voice of your neighbors and others in your community are being heard. And again, this is a great time, but I always believe all the time is the best time. Another thing I'm expecting is, I believe that the state budget is the best indicator of what we value as a state. It's one thing to say something's important, it's another thing to put your money behind your mouth.
Correct.
So they're going to be starting the state budget process. In fact, they actually have started. And so that's another way, not only say, this is what I want to your state representative or state senator, I want you to put some money into it too.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So whether it's to improve pre-K and childcare opportunities and pay childcare workers more, was something Governor Whitmer mentioned. But also we need to maybe equalize and make more equitable K through 12 education. So it doesn't depend on where you live, how much money you get. But you know what? I keep saying it's a great opportunity. The state of Michigan has a surplus. They got extra money.
Well, of
Some of
course,
it's
but you know what,
federal
Ruth?
money.
One thing about having a surplus of money is, how do you know? I mean, people are saying, well, what happened to the money that was supposed to be allocated for this and it didn't go through? We don't know what happens to monies when it's not used properly or it's not used at all. Does it go to another program? And how do you know it went to that program as a safety net? And how did it get skipped in the first place when it was supposed to be delegated to a certain cause? So, it's a lot of questions, but I wanted to ask you, how can people find out who their representatives are in their district? I mean, is it something that we should know automatically, or how do we do that?
No, no one should know this automatically. There's a lot of information out there. And if you know where it is and can understand it, it's great. I'm going to give some helpful hints and tips about how you can identify who represents you in the Michigan House and the Michigan Senate, and how you can get additional information. But I would also say to all your listeners, you are not alone. You don't have to do this by yourself. There are organizations like CDAD. And on the state level, we have an organization called CDM, and both of our organizations are celebrating our 25th year representing our members. But we also have the Michigan Nonprofit Association, the Michigan League for Public Policy. But if your interest is just education, there's statewide and local groups that are fighting for our students and our educators. So there's just some statewide groups, and then there's some special interest or special purpose organizations who do a lot of the hard work of getting information, analyzing it, and telling you, this is what we have found out. But let me just start figuring out who represents you.
So let me ask you this first. So
Sure.
out of your 200 members, there's probably a representative within those 200 members that represent a particular component of interest for the people. In other words, there's somebody that has knowledge about the housing issues. There's someone that has knowledge about education. I mean, because I think what we lose sight of is that the general public is looking for a outlet. to provide their concerns to. And so sometimes we figure that we have to go to our district leaders and say, hey, over here the water, say the fire hydrants need to be replaced. They've never been replaced before. It's been 40 years. My parents lived here and I've never seen them come. And that's one of the things I just seen recently. So that's why I said it. But anyhow, just think of something general. But people don't know who to go to. They don't know who is their council person in the neighborhood. They don't know anything. So they get kind of tossed around. How do you find out who's who, and how do you actually get a chance to connect your concerns to that person?
What I would say is, again, don't go alone. So if you talk about CDAD members, yes, it's a very broad in terms of our members and what services and programs they provide, but also some of our members are citywide. They serve and do work across the city of Detroit. Some may just be one council district or even a small neighborhood within. But the same thing with policy and budget issues. Some things affect everybody in the city. Some may affect certain areas. Some things affect, as I said, across the state. I don't think there's any school district in the state of Michigan, no matter how well funded, that isn't concerned about the quality of the education, their buildings and infrastructure and funding. I mean, there's some things that are universal. How they approach it may be different, but the issues are similar, the large issues. But I would say for the city of Detroit, which is what I focus on primarily, we have 23 legislators. This is because of redistricting. So we've got 15 in the House and 8 in the Senate. But if you look at a map of their legislative districts, you might have a map of a district that covers downriver, the city of Detroit, all the way through Oakland. I just want people to think about one person understanding the issues and the needs of people and organizations and businesses. I call them bacon strips, but if you don't like pork, you can call it something else. But they're long districts that include the city of Detroit, but they may also include Romulus and Royal Oak.
Okay.
I just think that's really hard. And that's why I believe our state legislators need us, because it would be very difficult for any one person, no matter how talented and dedicated they and their staff are, to really understand the things we understand about our neighborhoods, our schools, our roads, our fire hydrants.
So you stand behind the governor when she said fix the damn roads?
I would say we need to change how we fund road repair and our transportation. And it's more than just fixing roads. It's also just maintaining and I'm going to go deep on you. The state of Michigan allows heavier trucks, bigger trucks on our roads than our surrounding neighborhoods. So we can fix them, but if they keep getting messed up,
then what?
We've got to figure this out, because this problem's not going to go away. And we keep building more and more roads and not always have the money to maintain them. And keep in mind, we have state roads, county roads, and city roads, and who's responsible? That's always hard to figure out. My thing is somebody better fix these roads because and sidewalks and street lights and everything else that makes our neighborhoods and our communities and our cities great places to live.
We go through these things every year around and about. We go through some of the same things, especially when it comes to education, the school system. Every year, I'm trying to figure out, why do we wait till right the month before school starts and there's going to be a strike? Okay, I mean, what happened? When you could have went to the table and discussed these things before the school year. But we have a lot of issues every year that sometimes repeat themselves, and we just kind of wonder if we're making the right selection with the powers to be that we actually help get into these positions. Because when do you come back with, hey, we got the answer to that, or this is what we're going to do this year to alleviate the pressures of this? Give us something so we can appreciate the fact that we have these strong allies in place and they're doing what they say they're going to do, and people are benefiting from it. A lot of people locally, especially in the Detroit area, feel as though they're being left behind. The services that you think are out there for you may not apply to your area or may not apply, based on your income. It's certain things, Ruth, that go down that people are just astounded about. I know one time we were talking about the forms for tax exemption, and if a person has been living in their house for 40 years, why is still a long, drawn-out form when there should be a short form to be used to say, are you still in this house? Do you still have the same level of income? Check, check, check. And yes, you should be eligible for tax exemption on your home or partial tax exemption. We still don't have that clear. We still don't
Well,
have
I've
it
got
now.
good news.
Well,
There's been some improvements. There's
fill
been some
me in.
changes. And I know sometimes, Marcia, it sounds confusing, it's frustrating, but I would say two things. Get in where you fit in. Don't deal with everything because it becomes overwhelming, but also identify what are winnables for this year. And that's, again, working with other organizations. We have one. Advocates have won some significant changes here in Detroit and across the state. So even this week, a Senate committee passed an expansion of the Earned Income Tax Credit, which is an anti-poverty measure for working families. That's exciting news. Another thing, you mentioned the property tax exemption. There has changes. So if you've been if you're old and you're qualified based on age, you don't have to keep saying, I'm still old. If you've qualified for so many years in a row, you can do the short form and not the long form. So people may not always hear about the wins, the changes, and the improvements, or they may not remember those as much as they remember what didn't happen or what keeps coming up. Sometimes what keeps coming up is we really didn't solve the road construction issue. There was money to do some repairs, and you see all the orange barrels, so there's some things going on.
Right.
But unfortunately, if we talk about lead service lines or if there's some environmental issues, it costs millions and billions. And sometimes, although the need is there and people recognize it, the money may not be there. And I think that's why it's so important to know there's been federal funds, whether we're talking American Rescue Plan Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. I'm not just acting up. This is real money coming to the state, to cities, to school districts, to tribal governments that can make some changes that people can see and know this made a difference in their lives. But sometimes it takes a while for the money to funnel down from the federal government to the state government to the local governments. And then they have to do what they need to do to get the contracts and the bids and the work actually done. So some of the money for housing, they're not going to be repairing roofs in the dead of winter. But the money has been appropriated.
Yeah, the money is
there.
But when the money is there, how do you know? That's the problem. The money is there. It's sitting there. And I always tell people, don't wait till the summertime to apply for benefits. If you apply for the benefits now, say the wintertime, your name is on that eligibility list that when the first window of opportunity comes, the first 50 people, you just so happen to call and got in the right time. All of a sudden, by the time summer comes, somebody says, I'm going to call them and see if I can get my roof fixed. Well, the opportunity, the window was open a long time ago, so now you're number 250 person. And then they tell you that the funds ran out, or they tell you, we have to wait till next year. You get discouraged. We need to know how to know that if you don't apply for services early on before the season happens, before the season approach, that your chances of getting funding for home repairs and stuff like that are better when you apply prior to the seasonal time. I hope
Yes.
people are listening
I
to that.
I have to
Okay.
say a lot of what you say bothers me. I This is my full-time job and I have trouble keeping up with application deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
But also I think there's not enough money given the need. Let's talk about roof repair. 2,000 homes in the city of Detroit. That's I appreciate, and I'm sure the people get new roofs, but then they get new roofs, but not the gutters. I'm like,
Right.
okay, if you put a get them the gutters or the front porch stairs. At a certain point, I think that's where it's so important that we need to say what we want, both individually and collectively. Use our shared goals and ideas, as well as our collective voices and collective power.
Right.
But another thing is, I would say, um, we've got waiting lists. I don't understand in this day and age, in a country like our country, a state like our state, or a city like Detroit, that there's a senior emergency repair program. And I did say emergency, and people have been on that list for 2, 3 years. So if it's an emergency, uh, we're not treating it like that. So it's so
Right.
important because, you know, it's the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Yep.
Let us be the squeakiest wheel
We got it.
and
We
get the most
Yeah. We do.
grease.
We definitely got to do better. So,
So
and Ruth, I
no
want to.
matter how
I'm
frustrating or how hard this is, never give up using your voice.
So, Ruth, I'm going to post your information because somebody's going to want to reach out to you. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you see that shot on the screen, Community Development Advocates of Detroit, CDAD's email address, Ruth Johnson's connection, her phone number, and her email. Please jot that down or give us a call here at the Just Ask Talk Show, 1-800-323-5336. Ruth, I've got to run because I know I have to have you come back again because you're a regular. So will you come back again, Ruth?
Definitely, yes.
You know I always appreciate having you. So hold on for me 1 second. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know who I am. I'm your host, Marsha Florence for Just Ask, and I always like to bring you some resourceful information. So Ruth Johnson of CDAD will be back because she's a great resource and wealth of information to us and to you. So I'm your host, Marsha Florence for Just Ask, and what do I always say? If you know a person with a disability or if you just have a general question, don't be afraid to ask, just ask. I'm your host. See you next time.